Hello again. I'm Alex Rockwell. This is the 11th installment in a series of talks with my former teacher, James Piorkowski, on his tools for productive practicing, a collection of strategies and techniques you can apply in your practice and study of your instrument to ensure that you are solving problems and achieving your goals. You can download a PDF of the full list of tools on Jim's website, link in the description. Let's continue. All right. Next up on the list, critical review, performing for the microphone.
Right, which is one of the more humbling tools that we can apply. Hearing what it sounds like on the other side of the guitar. When we're actually practicing, or let's say we're practicing a performance, so we're not going through any of the tools, we're just performing the piece, see how it runs. If we make a mistake or we do something that we don't like, we can't be thinking about that. As in a live performance, you can't be reviewing yourself and saying, boy, measure 3 wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, that, especially that C sharp. Because now you're sunk in measure 12, because you can't be reviewing yourself. Mm-hmm. So in recording ourselves, we can listen back, and I think it's really nice to have the score and then mark little spots. This isn't working, or maybe this was a one-off. Like, I've never screwed that up before, and that's common. We just have to make sure it's not a 2-off, because then 2 is a pattern. Mm-hmm. So for critical review and seeing, not only are we playing cleanly, are we being legato, but are we liking the phrasing? Are we liking the dynamics? I find that when I've listened to recordings of my performances that I thought went well, really well, were not as good on the recording, and vice versa. When I thought, oh my gosh, this wasn't really that good, and I listened to it, it wasn't that bad, And again, when we're in the moment, it's our self-critiquing abilities are not that good. So having that objective way to assess ourselves is very valuable.
A couple things come to mind with that too. I think something that a lot of up-and-coming players, who are relatively inexperienced, something that a lot of them have a hard time doing is just listening to themselves while they're playing and while they're practicing. Somehow it's flying under their radar that their tone is not so good in certain passages, or that maybe there's a passage of slurs or something where everything is just sloppy and not coming out cleanly. Mm-hmm. And they're just not really like registering it as they're playing, Yeah,
because you're busy playing.
Right. There's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does reveal those things, Something I've heard, this is a mistake that I've made too when recording myself, is I'll make the recording and then I'll just listen back to it right away. Mm-hmm. Which, I don't know. I mean, maybe your mileage can vary with this, but when you do that, there's kind of this preconceived notion in your head about how you just played, right?
Right. You're influenced by what you just remembered yourself.
Yeah.
Doing. Sure.
Yeah, and it can kind of skew your perception of what you're listening to.
Right. I don't think it's necessarily bad to listen to it right away.
No.
Because you can see what went well or what didn't, but then to listen to it the next day with fresh ears is really a help. The other thing that I've realized is that, especially when we're using dynamics or other means of expression like tempo fluctuation, say a rubato or a ritardando, a cellorando, what we think we're doing, to a certain degree, we think, oh, this is a great crescendo. And then we listen back, and it was pretty mild.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a wonderful decrescendo, but we didn't really get that quiet. And I've learned that when we try to exaggerate our dynamics, like instead of aiming for mezzo forte, if we go for forte or even fortissimo, we probably are getting mezzo forte.
Right.
So there's so much energy that's needed to achieve the full expression that we want. We might be hinting at a ritardando at the very end of a piece that might be better served by a grander one. Mm-hmm. And then we listen back and we said, oh my gosh, I thought I did a lot more than that. So there's an application when we're recording. Exaggerate. See if you can go over the top with your dynamics or your rubato, and then listen back and see if it is over the top. See if it is actually exaggerated, or is it right in the ballpark of where you want to be. Mm-hmm. And that's a real interesting observation.
Yeah. We have to remember, right, the guitar has a very small dynamic range.
That's right.
In the grand scheme of things, so we have to really push extremes. To make a fortissimo seem louder, you have to make your pianissimos practically inaudible,
That's it. You have to play that lower dynamic range. And the artist that jumps out at me who did that so supremely was Roland Diens. Mm-hmm. He let you know that the guitar is an intimate instrument.
Yeah.
And, clear and articulate. But then when he did get loud, it was like, holy cow.
Yeah. Can you share your silent movie analogy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So when theater actors, stage actors, went into the movie world, which had just interpretation of what they said. You heard music, they were mouthing something, and then you saw the black insert of what you actually said. You didn't hear the words. They weren't talkies yet, as they eventually became known.
Right.
When you watch those movies, the expression of the actors is really over the top, incredibly exaggerated, because they were coming from a theater world, which live theater, if I'm sitting in the cheap seats and someone wants to express visually grief or happiness, they're going to do something in a very exaggerated way, much normal than you would if you were in everyday life. So the point of realizing that is that what we do is really more like live theater than a close-up of the talkies of movies where you actually can hear the actor speak in time. So we don't really have a close-up. We don't, with a close-up in a movie, in today's movies, you could show grief just with the face, Mm-hmm. But in theater, you wouldn't see that if you're sitting in row L or Z. You're not going to see that. So in music, we really want to be more like a theatrical stage performer with exaggerated dynamics, not the subtleties that a close-up camera can bring to the big screen. And then you think if you go to the movies, now that face, it's not only a close-up, but it's enlarged, right? It might be 8 feet across on the big screen.
Yeah.
So the subtleties are wonderful. The technology is amazing. But when we play live, that's not the deal.
Yeah.
And we have to, that's why I say try to exaggerate, and maybe you'll be in the right ballpark.
Now, what about mirroring and using the mirror and using video recording instead of just audio?
Yeah, so when Segovia, when he turned 90, there was a series of recordings of interviews with him. And it was put on NPR every week. And they're fascinating. And he was asked by the host, the interviewer, Larry Schnitzler, who, by the way, was a wonderful guitarist and composer, studied composition with Nadia Boulanger. And so anyways, Larry's asking Segovia, in your career, in your illustrious career, who was your best teacher and who was your best student? And he has that little cute accent, and he said, at the very same time, I was my very best teacher and my very best pupil. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of there's a lot of truth to that all of us should embrace, because most people, if they're studying an instrument regularly, they're going to have a 1 hour lesson a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
One-on-one. And then if someone's practicing, let's just say they're practicing 1 hour a day in between lessons. That's 6 days, 6 hours versus that 1 hour. So the influence of me on my playing is much greater than the teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the mirror, watching a video of yourself, you can see the things that your teacher hopefully has pointed out. Maybe your shoulders are too tight, your jaw's tight, your wrist is not in a proper left-hand position, so you're not using leverage. So you observe these things and you can correct them. So we observe not passively, like you're watching a TV show and you can't do anything about it, but you're observing like a teacher. So the person in the mirror or the person on the video that you recorded, which is you, now is your student, your pupil. Mm-hmm. And you have to make some critical analysis. Oh, I see what I'm doing wrong here. I see why I missed that shift. Whatever. So we have to consider ourselves as an important teacher, which means we really have to absorb what we learn and bring it to the lesson. Our rehearsal, if you will.
Yeah.
And when I used to study in Toronto, I would drive 90 minutes up for my lesson. I would go early and had about a half hour to warm up, and then worked with Ellie Kasner, one of my great teachers, and we would drive home. And back then, this was 1979, it was $100 an hour. And I wanted to get my money's worth. So I would come home and I would write down everything, that Ellie said in the lesson, and I would hear his voice in my head as I'm practicing, and mm-hmm. in his beautiful Austrian accent, and eventually that voice has to become your own.
Right.
We've all absorbed the things from our teachers and masterclass teachers and so on, and then we make them our own. But the reviewing ourselves on a video or looking in the mirror is really good. The other thing I found a little by accident kind of discovery, when we were in the pandemic and I was forced to teach by Zoom along with everybody else, I might be waiting for a student, and so I have my screen up and I could see myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm warming up, just waiting, and I'm thinking, wow, this is a good mirror.
Yeah.
Because it's really, close visually, and mm-hmm. I could make the whole screen me. Mm-hmm. That's also a nice way of watching yourself if you don't have a mirror.
Yeah. I do the same thing before lessons with my students,
Yeah.
If I get in and, it's like 30 seconds before they get on, I'm doing it. I always tell my students that they should practice in front of a mirror. I mean, like one like that back there,
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell them, if you're studying music at a university and there's a whole bunch of practice rooms in the music building, they all have mirrors in them for that reason, even though half the students use them for taking selfies, but whatever.
Well, the man who developed the Alexander technique of self-managing oneself, F.M. Alexander from Tasmania, outside mm-hmm. of Australia, he was a vaudeville stage actor. Mm-hmm. Back in the time before there was amplification, electronic amplification, and he had a problem. He lost his voice. He's lost his ability to project vocally. Back then they would do Shakespeare soliloquies and some comedy and sing, and it was a one-man show, one-person mm-hmm. show. And he realized, he went through many doctors and couldn't find any solutions. So he built this mirrored encapsulating wall, if you will. Maybe like if you go into a fine tailor place and you see 4 mirrors and you can look, you know, how your suit looks or whatever. And he observed himself very, very carefully and noticed some things. He noticed that when he was wanting to speak loudly, he would pull his head back, compress his spine, his upper spinal column behind his neck, and stretch this out. And he didn't consciously do that, but he became aware of it. And then when he countered that, and he extended his skull above his spine and dropped his chin a little bit, he noticed there was some loosening of his speaking mechanism. And so through very careful self-observation, he discovered a lot of stuff that he was doing that was hindering his ability to perform. And so that self-discovery is really important.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the tools we have, physical self-direction, be the giraffe. And I studied this Alexander technique, especially deeply during one of my sabbatical leaves from my time at Fredonia, and worked one-on-one with a teacher, a few teachers, and read about it quite a bit, and noticed how it really can be quite liberating. And but I like to be someone who can encapsulate a whole bunch of details into something easily understood and applied. So I live just 2 blocks from the Buffalo Zoo, and there are these giraffes that go out into the pen and run, and they're beautiful. You know, running giraffes are some of the most graceful animals you'll see. Anyways, I noticed, you know, they have this ability to move so fluently, and they have this long neck, obviously, and long spine, and their shoulders go down. Giraffe shoulders are pretty droopy. So if we emulate that, you know, with a tall spine, not lifting this way, this actually makes your spine shorter. But lifting this way. You could think if you had a little connector here with a balloon, a helium balloon, and let it pull the back of your skull off of your spine, you take the weight approximately of a bowling ball off the top vertebrae, which is about that big, and you relieve that weight, and that opens the spine up, and all of our nerve passages going to everything open up. So I think about that balloon, my chin dropping a little bit, tall, not straight, but tall spine, extended spine, and giraffe shoulders, droopy shoulders. And then I bring the guitar to me. And it really is quite freeing, you know. It's quite natural. So be the giraffe is a little phrase that I use for myself and for my students to emulate that contour of the body.
Yeah, I remember you using that in one of my first lessons with you, especially the balloon thing, you know. And I use that with my students now too, you know, and more or less anyway, you know, just this idea. It's not so much about sitting up straight, right? It's just sitting tall.
Right. Our spine is not straight.
Right.
The profile has an S shape. But what we want to do is expand the vertebrae a little bit with the muscles that surround the spinal column, so that we take some pressure off the discs in between, and, you know, sit at your full height. And then if we want to look at the guitar, we could look from hovering over. You know, we don't have to scrunch down and compress. The other thing, when we do this, when we sit short, if you will, we also compress our lungs.
Right.
And so our breathing capacity is hindered. And breathing awareness is also really important. A lot of times when we are about to, and I still do this, play a tricky passage, you'll notice, I notice, that I hold my breath right at that moment. Yeah, which is totally self-defeating. You know, our body doesn't want that, you know. Mm-hmm. And holding our breath can be a defensive or a fearful response. Think of when you're startled by something. You walk into a dark room, you didn't know someone was there, and they turn around and you clinch back a little bit, you know, but you hold your breath. Mm-hmm. So what I try to do when I'm practicing is, when I'm approaching that passage, just breathe normally. Make sure that especially exhaling, holding an inhalation increases your carbon dioxide levels, and your brain gets panicky. Mm-hmm. You know, that we want to get rid of that. So exhaling is really important. And there's a little trick through Alexander technique. If you think of a little candle, birthday candle, say about arm's length, and you try to blow it with pursed lips, mm-hmm. and you empty those lungs, it's very calming. Like, it's a great way to start a piece or right before you play, you know. And then because you're basically incapable of being tense, you know. So if it just flows out beautifully. So, and dogs know how to do that.
Yeah.
They know how to breathe.
I don't know what he wants.
Yeah.
He's
wants you.
over here pawing at me.
He wants you. He wants some love.
Yeah. Yeah, on breathing, you know, I can think of, well, when you say like exhaling on a difficult passage, I've always found that really helps, especially when you have some like big monster scale run or something. You know, like I remember back when I was playing the Rodrigo Fantasia Paro un Gentilhombre. Mm-hmm. There's it's been a while. I think it's in the last movement, the Canarios movement. There's a couple of huge scales that just go like all the way high up the neck, down low, and back up again. And I would practice them deliberately, going like the candle thing, you know. Mm-hmm. And it helped. I think of it like when you're lifting weights. You know, you're supposed to exhale when you
exactly
when
Very
you actually
similar.
do the push. You know, I remember this other time. This was when I was at Austin P. Kieran and I, you know, we bumped into one of the other guys in the studio, an undergrad student, and he was playing the Jose Merlin Suite del Recuerdo. Mm-hmm. And he was just having all kinds of issues with like being tense and just tripping over stuff, you know. And he kind of wanted us to come in and, you know, just pick him apart a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I remember Kieran told him, just play it again, but just focus entirely on your breathing when you play. Mm-hmm. And he did. And it was like, it was like magic, you know. I mean, it was just like leagues better, you know, because he wasn't getting so caught up in the little details and everything, you know. Because I think that was his problem. He was just holding his breath too much. You know, he was getting kind of red in the face. And, I think it was an enlightening moment for him.
That's a wonderful application of a tool in breathing and letting all the mistakes happen. Mm-hmm. Just breathe. Make sure that mistake of holding your breath does not occur. That's your only job. Mm-hmm. And what's amazing about it, because breathing is transparent, when we focus on it, it never puts a barrier between us and our playing. It actually opens up a focal point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great exercise. And there's another exercise that I apply with, or combine with breathing. I don't know if I ever used this one with you. A lot of times we hold tension in our jaw and hold our breath too at the same time. So there's a little drill that I will offer my students when I see that happening. And that is, pretend you just came from the dentist and you had double Novocaine. Back, way back in the jaw on both sides. And now
this one doesn't sound familiar. Yeah.
Your jaw is pretty slacked.
Uh-huh.
And you have a nose cold. You can't breathe out of your nose. Now, you're going to breathe while you're playing. And it's almost like you're going to be your tongue is numb also. I mean, you're incapable of speaking articulately. And you just play through that while having this breath through your mouth. Can't breathe here. And it's so impossible to tighten up anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it flows all the way down like a cold shower or a warm shower in the rest of your muscles. So that's a really good exercise.
Yeah.
Almost like you're drooling. You're so slack-jawed,
That's what I'd be afraid of, is drooling on my guitar.
Yeah, you can be close, but it does work, and it's revelatory.
Yeah.
It really is. And again, since it's transparent, it's a focal point. It brings us into our playing. It's beautiful. And, the other thing is, it's basically impossible to be distracted by anything else when you're focusing on that. Random thoughts or sounds going on in your practice room or outside your practice room. If you really are successful at that, it helps us pay attention to what we're doing and do the task at hand. So, and I have to remind myself to do these things all the time too. That's why I have the list.
Right. Yeah. I definitely tend to carry tension in my jaw. I think it's, as most of us probably do, right? Something I see like in recordings, if I like in video recordings I make with myself, is I do this when I'm playing, kind of suck my lips in between my front teeth.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like, it's not voluntary, it's just
of course. You're not consciously saying, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We do a lot of unusual things that we are unaware of.
All right. Thanks for watching. Once again, you can get a PDF of Jim's tools on his website, link down below. As usual, if you have any thoughts, questions, or experiences you'd like to share related to anything we talked about, please leave a comment. Jim or I can chime in. In the next segment, we'll be talking about varying practice locations and practicing slow, loud, and floppy. That might sound weird, but it's a really good thing to do. Thanks again. We'll see you in the next one.